So, in previous parts of this series, we have established the following. The wall is bad, it needs to come down, the Horn of Joramun can probably bring it down, the old ways were bad the whole time and probably need to be ended, and that the North is locked into these icy, conservative, old ways that can never change because of a magically backed fear of the others. A fear which is probably unwarranted due to the fact that you can have the others under guest right. Essentially, if you treat the others well, they will treat you well, meaning they were nothing to fear in the first place as long as handled appropriately. So, with all of that in mind, let's see if this story hits a little differently. He had been the 13th man to lead the night's watch, she said. A warrior who knew no fear. And that was the fault in him, she would add. For all men must know fear. A woman was his downfall. A woman glimpsed from atop the wall with skin as white as the moon and eyes like blue stars. Fearing nothing, he chased her and caught her and loved her, though her skin was as cold as ice, and when he gave his seed to her, he gave his soul as well. He brought her back to the night fort, and proclaimed her a queen and himself her king, and with strange sorceries he bound his sworn brothers to his will. For 13 years they had ruled, Night's king and his corpse queen, till finally the Stark of Winterfell and Joramun of the Wildlings had joined to free the Watch from bondage. After his fall, when it was found he had been sacrificing to the others, all records of Night King had been destroyed, his very name forbidden. Some say he was a Bolton, old Nan would always end. Some say a Magnar out of Skagos. Some say Umber Flint or Nori. Some would have you think he was a Woodfoot, from them who ruled Bear Island before the Iron Men came. He never was. He was a Stark, the brother of the man who brought him down. She always pinched Bran on the nose then. He would never forget it. He was a Stark of Winterfell, and who can say? Mayhaps his name was Brandon. Mayhaps he slept in this very bed, in this very room. The Night's King is a warrior who knew no fear in a society completely driven by fear. Because he knew no fear, he fell in love with a woman who was different from him, one of the others, and he realized, oh, wait a minute, the wall is the problem, and he needed to bring it down. The Horn of Joramun was blown in the time of the Night King, perhaps in an attempt to bring the wall down. The Horn of Joramun will be blown again in our story by our heroes to bring the wall down. The Night's King was sacrificing to the others. Craster, we just established, is sacrificing to the others to make sure that they will follow guest right. The Night's King was trying to bring the others under guest right, and he was trying to bring the wall down because he was trying to end the old ways when they were still new. This was a long time ago, but he was the one who recognized, hey, this is messed up and needs to change, the thing that Bloodraven and Bran are recognizing now and trying to do. That's why so many of our characters seem to have parallels to the Night's King, because many of our characters will fulfill things that the Night's King was trying to do. The guy who is painted by history as the most evil person in the story is actually the guy who created the to-do list our heroes will have to follow to solve the problem, because he was trying to solve the problem of the old ways thousands of years ago, and history is written by the victors. The Night's King lost to Joramun and to Brandon the Breaker, and that's why they erased his name from history, because of course they did. They erased everything they could about this guy because he was right over the target. That's what you do when someone is very close to the truth and you are holding a system in place that gives you power. You make them sound like the bad guy. You make them sound terrible, which is why the Night's King has been turned into this icy conservative boogeyman story. The Night's King could basically be read as the story about the Stark brother who turned against this icy conservatism, who went off and met a woman who taught him some new ideas, and suddenly he changed the way he was doing things, and started believing in things like immigration and women's rights, and that's not cool. And so they fucking destroyed him and they removed him. He's the black sheep of the family, man. We don't talk about that guy. We don't talk about that Brandon Stark. No. Yeah, screw him. He moved away. We don't really see him anymore. He came back once. It was a disaster. There was this whole big fight. The neighbors had to get involved. Somebody put a hole in the wall. Brandon got blamed for it. The neighbors took credit for it, but I think it was him the whole time, to be honest. So yeah, we don't talk about him anymore. We hate his wife. She's completely corrupted his mind. She was his downfall, you could say. So we just all kind of agree to pretend he didn't exist, and we just tell all the kids about how that's what happens, that's what happens when you're not afraid of the others, man. That's what happens, and then you can't come home anymore, we don't like you anymore. That is a reading of this story that makes complete sense. And when old Nan tells Bran this story about how terrible the Night King is, she ends it by saying mayhaps. She says mayhaps because it's all a lie, and she knows it's all a lie. That's the clue. She's sliding it in there. George is sliding it in there. The Night's King being evil has always been a lie. So don't worry out there, all of you Manus fans who have been denying reality. You can stop denying the Night's King parallels that Stannis has. He will be the Night's King come again, ruling from the Night Fort with his sorceress queen who's trying to do magical spells there and birthing shadow babies potentially. All of it is Night King stuff, but that's fine because the Night King was cool, actually. And Bloodraven and Bran are following the Night's King's to-do list because the Night's King was cool, actually. He was maybe the coolest Stark. He was trying to fix all of this shit 10,000 years ago. Imagine how far ahead Westeros could have been if all of this had been dealt with in the time of the Night's King. But instead, he was defeated. It is a cautionary tale for Bran if he fails. In the same way Jon, if he doesn't come back from the dead, and if nothing changed, Jon would be remembered basically like the Night's King. He went north of the Wall, fell in love with a woman who corrupted him, destroyed his brain, and he was trying to do all of these terrible things because she had corrupted his soul, and he couldn't think for himself anymore, and so we had to kill him. We had to take him down, and we had to kill all those wildlings there too. We just had to do it, man. That's what history would remember. If Jon dies, the wildlings are killed. All of it feels like the Night's King could be seen as a cautionary tale for our main characters. So, with that fog of history in mind, let's take a look again at what happened at the time of the Night King, according to legends, especially around the Horn of Joramun, because I think maybe we could get an answer here. So if blowing the Horn of Joramun is needed to bring down the wall, the wildlings all think that Joramun blew the horn, and the king in the north at the time was called Brandon the Breaker Stark, which seems to imply he could have potentially broken the wall. Now, considering we have speculated that bringing down the wall is likely needed to solve the problem of the others, and the Night's King was likely trying to solve the problem of the others a long time ago, it seems most likely to me that he was the one who would have built the magic horn to bring down the wall. So why is it called the Horn of Joramun, and why do we have King Brandon the Breaker? Here's my thoughts. If the Night's King, in his 13 years of rule, was basically not holding the Night's Watch under strange sorceries, and not being magically bound by this woman he met from the north, he was in fact learning what the wall actually was and what's actually going on with the old ways, and telling the Night's Watch that, so they all of a sudden realized, oh yeah, we should help him try to end the old ways, and that was their rebellion. And then he got pretty darn close, right? He was apparently found to have been sacrificing to the others, and apparently the Horn of Joramun was blown, and the wall came down. So he had the others under guest right, and he had the wall down. These guys stopped him at the last second before he could allow the others back into the Weirwoods. So, this was like a last second near miss ending of the old ways. The wall was down, and they had to cover their tracks. They had to have the wall rebuilt, And these first men kings, these warg kings who had all this power from the old ways, had to cover their tracks, paint the Night King as a terrible person, make sure no one ever tried to do that again. And how the heck are you going to explain the fact that your big magic wall just came down? Well, here's what you do. If you are the wildlings, you go and you say, yep, King Joramun blew a horn and brought down the wall so that you could all go through if you want, and we could defeat the Night's King. And Brandon the Breaker goes and tells all of the people, yeah, I broke down the wall at the Knight's Fort just so we could take down the Night's King and stop him from sacrificing to the others. Don't worry, the Weirwoods are going to rebuild the wall. I had to do it to defeat the Night's King, guys. It's okay. So that's why he's called Brandon the Breaker. He took credit for breaking the wall to beat the Night's King. Joramun, it's called Joramun's Horn, because he took credit for breaking down the wall on the wildling side. But really, it seems most likely that the Night's King broke down the wall in an effort to allow the others back into the Weirwoods inside of it, and he was stopped at the last moments. So that could explain why there are so many Night King parallels with so many of our main characters who seem to be on the good side. It would explain why Craster is being allowed to sacrifice his babies to the others just like the Night's King did, even though Bran and Bloodraven are not evil, because it really had to be one way or the other, right? Either mimicking all of the Night's King's actions is evil, or the Night's King probably wasn't evil, right? It's gotta go one way or the other, and I think we are coming up on the side of the Night's King was actually a good guy all along. What do you think? Is that convincing? Does that make sense of the story of the Night's King when it's being passed down and told by this conservative old ways society that has been locked in their ways for 10,000 years? What do you think? Let me know in the comments, and I'll be back with something else very soon.